guys, I've been getting a ton of questions how to properly use the stick bait. So today I'm going to go over the how, the why, and the where so that you can be successful on your waters. About 6 years ago, I moved down to Clearwater, Florida from Georgia, and in Georgia I did a lot of bass fishing, fished tournaments, fished 2 or 3 days a week up there, and only used artificials. So when I got down here, I really wanted to continue using artificials, but now in the saltwater. So about, I'd say 4 years ago, I saw a group of guys, I saw a video on YouTube, a group of guys called Cast over in Australia, and the style of fishing that they were doing just kind of blew me away. They were catching these huge fish on topwater plugs and jigging. And I thought to myself, that's something that I can do here in our waters. So I started experimenting with stick baits over here in the Gulf of Mexico. And what I found out very quickly was that it is super successful and not a lot of people are doing it. Today, what I want to do is just kind of break down the gear, casting, the stick baits I use, all the terminal tackle, so that you can, emulate this on your home waters and be very successful with it as well. I think what you'll find out is you catch some badass fish with it. So just as you and I are competitive as fishermen, the fish are the same way. There's been a lot of days where I've thrown this stick bait out over a wreck 80 miles offshore and pulled a whole school, 6 to 7, sometimes 40, 50 pound amberjack or 15 pound tuna following this back to the boat. And I can't tell you how exciting that is. My first trip ever fishing offshore, I was able to throw a stick bait and it blew my mind. It pretty much ruined me, and it's the only thing I want to do. But we are at the tip of the iceberg with stick baits here in America. They do it everywhere else in the world. And I think that's such a cool thing. If you look now in Florida, how big slow pitch jigging's getting, this is another thing just like that I think can bring you a lot of success and something I'm super excited about. So today I want to go over the proper rod, the reel, the breakdown, how to cast, how to work these stick baits so that you'll be successful on your home waters with them as well. A few things that come to mind. On the other coast, there is wahoo, there is a lot of tuna, those pelagic species, and this is an amazing bait to catch those. It gives you another opportunity to catch them besides just vertically fishing. The guys who fish the mullet run, tarpon, snook, they will crush these baits. Bass fishermen, earlier this year we went up to Georgia and we throttled some big spotted bass and striper on the floating stick baits with some of the most vicious strikes I've ever seen. Fishing is all about opportunity, and what I mean by that is being prepared for every moment. Last year, me and Alistair went fishing and he reeled up a 60-pound cobia on a downrigger. Well, guess what? There was one the same size with it. And because I was prepared for the moment and had my stick bait, I was able to cast over there and catch it. And now I have my PB cobia as well. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. Our time on the water is limited. We mostly all work 9 to 5 jobs. So when you're out there on the water, you really want to capitalize and catch all that you can. And I know a lot of you can relate to this as well, is you're out there fishing and there's a giant cobia swimming by the boat, or you see your trophy fish that you want and you're just forced to watch it swim away because you're not prepared for the moment. You don't have something to throw at them. This is going to change that game. So let's break down the gear that I'm using to throw stick baits. Number one, I want to talk to you about the rod. You want a rod that is between 7 and 8 feet long. The reason for that is you want to be able to make very long casts. That is the number one thing in being successful when throwing a stick bait, is to be able to really bomb the bait out there and cover water. Right here I have a 7.4 medium heavy Temple Reef STK. This rod is a great rod to throw stick baits on for floating and sinking stick baits. It has a good backbone, but it's got a soft tip. And what that tip does is it enables you to be able to make a long cast and pendulum the bait, but it also prevents you from pulling treble hooks on fish because the tip is going to give when they go on long runs. What the tip also helps you do is work the stick bait in the water column. So let me talk about the reel I'm using to throw stick baits. Right here I have a Stella 8K HG. It's very important you want a high gear ratio reel when stick bait fishing to pick up the line and move the bait faster. I don't suggest going any smaller than an 8K size if you're fishing offshore, especially guys on the East Coast that might hook up on a wahoo. You want to have that line capacity. Having more line capacity is actually going to help you cast farther as well. Now on this reel, I've actually got a 16K spool on this 8K. You don't need all that. I had that from a previous trip and I just kept it on there where I was going to need more line capacity. But an 8K or better is the size, and you want to remember to have a high gear ratio reel. In regards to the braid or line I'm using 50-pound Daiwa J-Braid Grand, or I'll use Daiwa J-Braid H-Strand. I really like the H-Strand. It's smooth, it casts very well. I have that going to a 50-pound fluorocarbon leader because I'm throwing a sinking stick bait. This is something very important to note. When you're throwing the sinking stick bait, you want a fluorocarbon leader so the bait gets down. When you're throwing the floating stick bait, you want monofilament because it floats and it'll keep the bait up on top of the water column. I have found the best leader really for my water when I'm really trying to get that bait down is 50-pound fluorocarbon. Once I go higher than that and get up to 60, it seems like it's harder to get that bait down. Now you are sacrificing some power if you hook a giant amberjack, but you have to get the bait down sometimes to really get bit. All right, so the way I have my stick bait rigged is I have my knot going to a ball barrel swivel to a split ring. On the actual bait, I have a treble hook on the belly, and on this one I'm running a single on the back. I go back and forth. Sometimes I use 2 trebles or 1 single. The thing I like about the single on the back is if your treble ever slips, you've got a really good hook still in the fish to really put some heat on them. But I've been experimenting back and forth. I feel like it swims a little bit better when you're running 2 treble hooks, but it's something that I encourage you to get out there and play with yourself, see what works for you. Right now, this is how I'm rigging my bait. I just want to mention again how important it is to have this swivel going to the split ring. It gives the bait a lot of action, but what else it does, it enables you to change out baits for different sizes, colors throughout the day without having to cut off and retie. One thing you're definitely going to want is a good pair of split ring pliers. I have these HPA pliers. These have lasted me 2 or 3 years. They're great pliers, and keep in mind a lot of you guys that slow pitch jig have the smaller, I think the Texas tackle to open up split rings. You're probably going to need a little bit bigger pliers that can open up heavier split rings for stick baits, depending on the size hook and split ring that you're using. All right, so I want to break down the difference of floating and sinking stick baits and the ones I use. Right here is a cast 40-gram Fat Boy sink, and if I could pick one stick bait to use, it would be the sinking model, just because it's so versatile. You can throw this out over wrecks, let it sink down and catch jacks with it and catch fish that are way down in the water column. You can also throw it at breaking fish and move it fast across the top. This little bait right here, the 40-gram, is a tuna killer. I've caught a lot of tuna on this. They like the small profile of it. And what's pretty neat about this bait, if you look, you'll see the shape of it. When it falls, it actually does like a little wiggle. And believe it or not, my biggest tuna I ever caught was just letting the bait fall down, and he hit it on the fall. But by far, one of my favorite baits is a sinking stick bait, and something I would probably throw 90% of the time when I'm fishing. The advantage of a sinking stick bait is that you can let this thing get way down in the water column. I can cover different parts of the water column, but I can also let this sink down 100, 150 feet and work it right over the structure. You're fishing horizontally, as most of the time when we run out, we're fishing vertically. So it's really covering a different part of the water column, and that's what makes it so damn effective. Next, I want to talk about the floating stick baits and when I use this. This is a bait that I will start out with in the morning because it's been my experience that most times in low light conditions, the fish will be higher in the water column. This bait's going to sit right on top of the water, and it's going to look like a struggling bait fish. What is my favorite thing about this bait is that when you sweep the bait, it goes under and does this wild S-kick, and then it pops back up. And while it's under the water, it leaves a huge bubble trail. That bubble trail is badass, and I think that's what the fish really key in on. It's a good bait also when you're running into breaking fish and you see like a lot of schooling fish. I will always go with the float. Remember, you want to use this with a monofilament leader, not the fluorocarbon. I'm using 80 to 100 pound monofilament leader. You know, I fish for amberjack a lot, and I think that they're so keyed in on the bait that the size of the leader doesn't matter. So I want to have all the power I can, all the strength of my leader. But remember, floating, monofilament, sinking, fluorocarbon. Hey guys, as I mentioned before, the most important thing you can do in stickbait fishing is make a super long cast. This is really going to help you when you're seeing breaking fish off in the distance, or also when you're fishing over structure and you want the bait to get down. Making a long cast is going to eliminate the scope in the line, and it's going to help it really get down towards your structure. Another thing I want to point out is when I'm trying to make a long cast, I'm leaving my leader knot outside of the guides. By having just the braid go through the guides, that's going to increase your cast as well. So what you want to do when you're casting these stick baits is you want to practice. And I know that sounds funny as hell to most of you guys, like I don't need to practice casting, but you want to be able to use your body as a fulcrum and really get that bait out there. What I'm doing is I'm using also the end of that rod with the soft tip to really pendulum the bait out. You want the rod to do the work for you. Your power is going to come from your hips here, and when you go to cast, it's like a pendulum and you drive it through your body. So I will stand like this, I'll see my structure out there, I'll get my bait out here, probably have my legs even spread apart, and then I'll go like this and drive through it. So now I want to show you how to properly work a sinking stick bait. In this scenario, I'm going to be fishing this over a wreck, probably 150 feet deep, and I want to show you exactly how I do that. First, I'm going to make a long cast out over the structure. Okay, so once that bait's hit the water, I'm gonna give it a good minute to really sink down. I'll probably put my rod in the rod holder, go get a drink, something like that. Make sure that this bait is as close as it is to the structure. Once I feel confident that this is in the strike zone, I'm gonna pick up my slack, and the way you wanna work a sinking stick bait, you're gonna do a snap, snap, pause. Snap, snap, pause. And then I will vary my retrieve. Sometimes if I know the fish are fired up, I'm just gonna do a few fast snaps. I'm pointing my rod to the water and just doing some snaps. And you'll get some vicious strikes doing this. This is probably my favorite way to catch a fish. So the way to work a floating stick bait is you wanna point your rod towards the water, leave a little bit of slack in your line, and it's just slow sweeps like this. You pick up your slack, sweep. What that's gonna do is that's gonna make your bait dive down with an S kick and leave a huge bubble trail and then pop back up. And 9 times out of 10, they most likely hit it right when it pops back up. You'll see some awesome strikes with this. This topwater fishing is really, really fun. Hey guys, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I have no doubt that if you apply these stick bait techniques to your water, you're gonna catch some awesome fish. If I've taught one of you anything today, then I've done my job. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us directly at castfishing.co. You can also reach out to me at Ryan Hanks Fishing on Instagram. I love helping people, and I'm very passionate about this, and I want you to do good. As I mentioned before, I will include all the products in the description below, as well as links to where you can get them. We're about to run offshore and put this to the test and see if we can get on some big amberjack. Tight lines.